Some of our fears are healthy, those ones that help us stay safe, cautious around dangerous animals, or help us to make wise decisions about who we become friends with. But some fears can hold us back from being who God created us to be. And these are often emotional fears, like fear of missing out, or putting out, fear of what other people think of us. So let me start by telling you a story from my life. When I had to work through being fearful, when I was at a change in direction in my life. So in 2019, I was working in anaesthetic research at Waikato Hospital. I was in a great team. It was a small team, they were very knowledgeable, and most of them were Christians. It's kind of a bit uncanny. So I felt well supported, and I was using my skills in medical research, which is what I had been trained in. I also had a wonderful church family at the time. My biological family was close by, and I had great running routes. I was really quite into my sport at the time, kind of altogether just set up really well. But deep down, I kind of knew that this wasn't my long-term situation. I didn't see myself staying in research, and I wanted a family, so I needed to widen my circle of friends. And after looking at other options, I kind of loosely made this decision that, I think I'll study theology at Carey Baptist College for a year. Kind of made sense of my skills and desires, and it felt like this is what God was calling me to. And I decided that in about May 2019. But it took me like 6 more months of working through things to actually make the decision fully and commit to the decision. As I kind of worked through some fears and practiced trusting God. As I was preparing for tonight, I went back through my journal. I have kept an online journal since 2012. Sometimes, some periods of my life I've journaled much more than others. And I was like, I just wonder if I can find something that I wrote around this time. And I'm just going to read you a little excerpt from a journal entry that I made in about June 2019. This is what I wrote. Lord, I'm asking myself, can I really go without an income for a year? Use up some of my savings that I've been working so hard to build the last 2 years? Can I really let myself get behind my brothers in terms of finance? I don't really want to earn lots of money, but I do feel the pressure to keep up to my siblings. Lord, I need to trust that this is where you're calling me to and that you will look after me financially if I pursue study next year. I need to trust that I will have enough to live on and be content with that, not comparing myself to my siblings' earnings and lifestyle. Will I be okay with my children growing up in a poor household where they may not get the same opportunities as their cousins? Am I really okay with their character being more important than their financial status? Lord, that is what you say is important. Please help me to believe that. I also sense that Auckland is where I'm going to meet my future husband. It was a bit funny reading it now. Is that false hope, Lord, and me just making that up, or is that actually what you put on my heart? Father, I'm scared to dream, I'm scared to hope. And then what do I do with my finances? Do I buy this house at Cumbria Way off my family's trust and have my finances tied up for 5 years until I can sell it without incurring a penalty? Do I invest my money in something else, or do I just keep it in the bank and wait to make that decision? Would I even come back to Hamilton afterwards? Lord, so many questions that are crippling my actions. Help my unbelief. And that was the end. So you can see I was in a whirlwind of what do I do? I kind of think this is where I'm going, but I have all of these questions and things holding me back, and kind of underlying that was, in that journal entry, a fear of money, and a fear of not keeping up with my peers financially. So kind of after that, I practiced telling myself that in God's kingdoms, I am building up riches that cannot be destroyed. I don't need to pursue careers with a high income. God will be faithful and I will have enough. I processed my feelings by journaling a lot. I wrote down my prayers and I gave my anxious feelings to God over kind of the next few months. As well as being afraid of falling behind my brothers financially, I was afraid of feeling futile, particularly my past study that I'd done. Futile means it being a waste of time if I was to change careers. And I was afraid of what people would think of me for giving up an academic career. going to something that to a lot of people I think would seem nonsensical. And to some extent these fears are still there. I have to continually remind myself of God's faithfulness and that his opinion of me is the only one that matters. But 2 months later, I wrote in my journal, being very vulnerable here, this is what I wrote a couple of months after that first entry that I read out. Father, I am starting to see your hand on these last 2 years of my life. In some ways, I felt like it's been a waste of time, but I can see how you brought me back from Oxford to Hamilton to recover, heal, be restored, and be refreshed. And now that time is drawing to a close, and I'm ready to set off again. My work at Anesthetics has been great these last 2 years. Although I didn't want to stay in research, you placed me in an encouraging and laid-back team full of faith so that I could be nurtured. And you allowed me to succeed at that work, even though I don't feel very good at it. And now it's time to go and take hold of what you have next for me, what you are calling me back to. After 8 years in the wilderness of engineering and medical research, I believe you are leading me back to ministry for you. So you can already kind of see just between those two entries that my perspective had changed. I had a much bigger perspective of what God was doing in my life, and I was much more at peace of my future direction. And so another 6 months later, I moved to Auckland and I began my study at Carey full time. And I met Wesley that year and never moved back to Hamilton. So I look at that story now and I just see how God was faithful to me, and I'm thankful that in this story, I didn't let my fears prevent me from God's blessings, although that's not always the case. So